all courts, police, law enforcement officers are in United States. Okay? I mean, think about it. Don't they have to say I'm a U.S. citizen? Matter of fact, there was a cop in Florida that I saw on the internet recently that said that he was a sovereign. He got fired.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what they should have done under their system, because you can't be a cop unless you're a U.S. citizen. You see what I'm saying? You have to be a U.S. citizen to be a cop. And so if he's saying he's not a U.S. citizen, then he can't be a cop. He can't be a government employee unless you're a U.S. citizen. And what's that?
He could be president, though.
Yeah, but, you know, yeah. Anyways, all of their legislation is color of law. And that's what I tell them is Canada's a municipal corporation. All its officers are subject to United States Code. Canada's a municipal corporation domiciled in the District of Columbia. Whoops, there we go. Press the wrong button. And I can show you that as it's actually in that affidavit of criminal complaint on the back part of it. It shows Canada being in the District of Columbia. Now, United States is the District of Columbia. Okay, if you understand United States Code and everything, that's exactly what it is. But in Canada, they have all its officers are subject to United States Code. The FBI has offices in Ottawa, Toronto, Vancouver. One thing I tell them, if you use their codes, rules, and regulations in your statutes, in other words, I say pursuant to Title 18 United States Code, Section 1342, that's implied that I'm a U.S. citizen. Okay, that's true. So I have a statement in there, and if you look, it's on here at wow, maybe I don't have it in this one. I put it in there now. Oh, here it is. You're further notice that the use of federal and state statutes, codes, rules, and regulations within this document is only noticed that which is applicable to you, and is not intended, nor shall it be construed to mean that I have conferred, submitted to, or entered into any jurisdiction alluded to thereby. And a lot of this stuff, quite frankly, is stuff I picked up over the years, because that's not mine. I mean, I picked that up from someone else, and I thought, well, that looks pretty good, so now I use it. But so if you use their codes without something like that in there, you're saying that you're a U.S. citizen. And so you put something like that in there, then it means nothing, right? At common law, what you should be using is public law, okay? Because their codes are all come from public law, but the problem is that there's millions of these public laws, even federal, and trying to figure out, you know, how they make this one, and then it's revised over here, and revised over here, and revised over here, and all this other stuff. You know what I mean? It can be a nightmare keeping up with that stuff. But so anyways, I put that statement in there. Commercial paper, if they receive commercial paper as payment for their compensation, and they all do, then they're a municipal corporation. And that's where I put in that if you receive commercial paper and compensation, then you're not, a municipal corporation, and you have no more authority over me than a Walmart rent-a-cop. And that's true. And they all do. Law of Nations. This is another thing. There's a set of books called Law of Nations. Chitty wrote one set. There's actually other ones that were written before that. But anyways, Chitty is one that comes to mind. It's a 2-volume set. I've got it. Anyways, in there it says that there's 3 requirements for a nation. One of them is people. Okay, and when I put on my documents, I'm a holder of the office of the people, and so therefore I'm fill that qualification. People, land, and resources. Okay, and if you don't have all 3 of those, you're not a nation. And land, so what I do is I brought forward all the rights and privileges of a land patent, and I converted silver to land, okay, and that's one of the things I say, is that I converted silver to land, and together with all the rights and privileges of the land patent, and so therefore I have absolute title to land. And then resources is money, right? So then I tell them that I have much more than 21 of these in my possession, okay? Now in my possession doesn't necessarily mean in my pocket, okay? If I got it in a storage unit somewhere, it's still in my possession because I have control of it. So I tell them that I have much more than $21 in silver. So I fulfill the requirements for a nation, okay? So I'm a nation under international law. That's one of the things I tell them. Another thing I tell them is the only legitimate power held by any government is government that we the people delegated. And if I delegate the authority, I can revoke that delegation at any time, and I also retain that authority. Even though it's delegated, I still have the authority. And I tell them my rights are unalienable, not inalienable, and they cannot be alienated under any circumstances. I tell them that any contract with me, unless it's a contract between living souls, any contract with me between me and a fiction is a nullity, okay? And if you think about it, a fiction can't enter into a contract with a living soul at common law. There's no contracts between fictions and living souls. There's only contracts between living souls. And so otherwise they're all a nullity, okay? And that's what I tell them. And then I tell them I have the right to resist unlawful arrest with lethal force if necessary. And this is a court case that talks about it, where the officer is killed in the course of disorder which naturally accompanies an attempted arrest that is resisted. The law looks with very different eyes upon the transaction when the officer had the right to make the arrest from what it does when the officer has no right. What may be murder in the first case may be nothing more than manslaughter in the other, or the facts might show that no offense has been committed. And actually an unlawful arrest is an assault, and I can show you there's case law that talks about that. And so if they unlawfully arrest you, they assault you, and so that's a felony right there. Any restraint upon my liberty is an arrest. Okay, there's court cases that talk about that, and that's one of the things I tell them. And then I sign it and seal it in red ink on the land. You always sign on the right-hand side. Okay, you see court documents, they're always signed on the right-hand side. And I always put in the document signed and sealed in red ink, okay? Red ink is de jure. Okay, you see the post office. A lot of places the post office uses red stamps, okay? The post office is de jure. The post office was set up before the United States. I don't know if you're aware of that. Okay, the post office was incorporated before the United States. And so I think it was in 1775 or something like that when the post office was created. And so the post office has never been into bankruptcy. The United States has been into bankruptcy, but not the post office. And now they've created the United States Postal Service, which is a separate entity. It can go into bankruptcy, but the post office doesn't. And anyway, so you see a lot of these postal clerks that use red stamps. Well, that's because they're de jure. And so you use red ink. Red ink is what sovereigns use. Sovereigns use the right side of the page. I might use witnesses. I'm getting to the point that I don't use too many witnesses anymore. I just sign it and send it to them. And what I do is I have a third-party witness. And if you read this, if you see this one has a third-party witness, which is the officer of the court that I was telling you about. And I think that's really powerful. But if you can get 26 witnesses to sign it, then that's pretty powerful too, because now you're saying I got a grand jury. If you have issues with this, come see my grand jury. But so I'm a kind of in-your-face sort of guy, you know what I mean? I always send it by registered mail. Registered mail is kept under lock and key, and there's a chain of custody. A better way of service is to effect service by three or four people, each make an affidavit of service. But the objective is to build a case against them, and they know it. A lot of these judges are hard to get a hold of, so registered mail is handy because, the post office gets them.
Do you ask for a signed receipt for?
Yes, I always get the green card back. Absolutely. Criminal complaint. If they do anything other than grovel, I file a criminal complaint. I let them prove they're honoring their oath of office. I attach my evidence. I send the criminal complaint to their boss. If possible, I record the criminal complaint into the public. After 30 days, I add their boss as an accomplice after the fact to the next criminal complaint and send it to their next boss up the chain of command with a notice and demand in which I demand that they remove and prosecute their criminal. I keep going up the chain of command up to and including the president. I add the president, record the document into the public, and send them a copy. And I use registered mail or personal service with witnesses. When you use this procedure in ensuing action, it essentially becomes a counterclaim. Always take the initiative. Go on the attack. Show up at the judge's office a few days before the hearing with witnesses. Always demand. When in court, they ask you, do you understand? Okay, there's certain things they do in court that you got to understand what's happening. According to Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1856 edition, in the definition of parties, it said, those persons who want understanding are idiots, lunatics, drunkards, and infants. So, Judge, I can see you're not an infant. Are you drunk or just an idiot? That would be my response. A lot of it depends on how brazen you want to be, you know. But that would be what I'd be saying, quite frankly. I'd tell them about the Bouvier's 1856 edition first, and then I'd tell them so. But at any rate, you're in essence stating that you made a mistake of law and fact due to fraud, coercion, and intimidation on part of government officials, and this process is simply correcting the public record. You're telling them to correct their records. Christ said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." You've been empowered with knowledge. Never take anyone's word for this. Study it for yourself. Knowledge is power. What's the alternative? And that's the end of that one. Let's take a little break. I think you have to go pick up somebody or something, or?